this month.
We're good?
We're good.
This on. So last year, we got together and put together a rudimentary strategic plan to help guide us through our future because we hadn't done that previously, and we've got to the point in our organization that it was really appropriate to have something a little more formal. A lot of people that strategic plan hire consultants and they got pages and pages of crap, right? We try to keep it very simple. I go back and reflect on our mission, basically to protect people in El Dorado County and the property from fire through basic education, cooperation, innovation action. And as when we started off, the Fire Safety Council was doing most of the work that really should have been done by other people too. And things have changed. A lot of the other organizations have stepped up to the plate, and it's a different universe than what it was 5-6 years ago. So next slide, please.
This was a bit more complicated. I don't know why. Yeah, it's not. See if it'll. Here. There's 3 separate screens for it, and for some reason, there we go. Okay. Oh, that's much easier.
So why description? We passed basically an 11-point program of recommendation. This year, we met with Dorothy, Tamara, Mike Connolly, Cord, and myself, and because we want to have a kind of pre-review, and I appreciated Cord and Mike Connolly because they weren't involved in the original process. We just want to get some fresh eyes on it. And so we discussed the recommendations, how well they're going, what we should do with them, and then to come up with suggestions, any modifications, or just to put things in context. Next slide, please. So what we want to do is just basically discuss the plan, consider what we've done and how that changes the landscape, and then figure out how any modifications we want to do for this upcoming year and to look into the future. So, please. Yes.
So the one that I have with the
has none of this on there.
It's different.
Right. That was the original, and I didn't want to really send that out.
This will be posted.
This will be posted, right? So it may be changed based on what we talk about today.
Okay.
So I just kind of threw in a box saying, this is why we're here, is that we just grew so fast. And we really needed to get a handle on it because lots of times, either you don't have any money, or sometimes the problem is you have too much money, you don't know how to deal with it. So that was our original issue. Now we're faced with some uncertainty. As they say, the great fluctuations, cash flow, kind of put the strain on us, right, Janet? And so just to put that in context, in 2026, we just don't know what's going to happen. Okay? That's kind of like what kind of change in our discussion. And please jump in anytime. This isn't just me talking. So next slide, please. So one of the things had to do with staffing, and that was one of our major, considerations last year. And we made an attempt and hired an executive coordinator. It didn't work out. And we've been working at the e-board level on modifying the job description on more of what we really need. But I believe that the clerk and grant admin positions are been functioning well. It's really been improving and putting together some best management practices. I had a long discussion with Alice also yesterday, and one of the things she pointed out is there's a difference between efficiencies and effectiveness. And I said, Yeah, you're right. I know if Alice is on the line, to jump in on this, but, and yes, we've been working on, some of the business practices to improve our efficiencies. But, I think the overall goal here is to improve our effectiveness. And that's really, what we're looking for, is to improve the effectiveness of the organization. And so we kind of, looked at this, and I noticed that in the original version, first thing was to determine the status of hires as employees or contractors. That's really kind of fast backwards. That's kind of like the last thing. So I just kind of switched them around and threw that at the bottom end, of the recommendations. So just like, it just didn't flow. I think this flows better. And in 2026, the recommendation, that we talked about is to continue to invest in our existing staff, and then to recruit additional staff as determined. We've talked a lot at the E-board about what we had as an executive coordinator. What do we really need at this point, and how do we articulate that well enough? Any other thoughts from, the group? Dorothy, Ken, anything on that?
No.
Chris?
So having been in the building and recognizing how the building functions
Right,
in a very circular way. I understand why our decision on the executive coordinator, why it didn't function, the way we all thought it could function. So for that, kudos. Well, that means we're agile, make adjustments that don't work, and that we make things hopefully that have a certain period associated with them. And then we see how effectively that's happening. Thank you so much. I want to give you kudos on that.
yeah, and again, I think originally we wanted to be all things, and we kind of lumped it in, and, we were being overly ambitious, or maybe a little naive. Yeah, Cameron.
Just building on what Alice said, to me, it's not just of effectiveness versus efficiency, but there's also the human element in there that we want to make sure we're continuing. I think we've talked a lot about this. So often efficiency can be the be all and all, and you lose sight of not just of being, what are you being effective, but are you being human and having those relationships that are important to have as a grassroots community organization.
Right.
I'm gonna take that and just move it to the next level, and just saying, we all know people that they basically take life or business and they make it into metrics, right? And we are more than metrics, right? I remember I was working for a large healthcare system that will never remain unnamed, Kaiser Permanente, and I'm talking to the national director of safety, and I said, Ken, not this Ken, another Ken, and I said, I'm gonna make a wild guess, is that there's a copy of the Harvard Business Review under a nightstand. And he didn't dispute me. But I think we are a human organization, and we are an organization of volunteers, and that is what makes us what we are, and so I absolutely concur with that. Ms. Wall.
I think going on what Tamara was saying, the first 2 quarters of the year were a little challenging. But as the time rolled on in May, for me as the secretary, I had probably discovered the most pleasant thing I could discover, and that is meeting with Jessica, our program coordinator, and Carrie, our administrative assistant. They like working here, they like what we're doing, and they are very supportive of our mission and our goals. And they have things that they know we can improve on, and they're willing to say, this isn't working and I want to do this or whatever. So to have that kind of support is exciting. It makes what I do worth it, because then I can give them my work so I can go do my other work. So say team that we have. The executive board, Chris said it, we're agile, we figure out something's not working and whether it's pleasant or not, we have to deal with it, and so I appreciate that when it comes to staffing in the organization.
It has been said that you find yourself digging yourself into a hole, the first thing you should do is stop digging.
Fill it with water, Ken, fill it with water.
I'm sorry to bring this up now, but if you go back to your very first slide,
Make a pool.
it says wildfire. I think honestly, we should remove the word wild and just say fire, because we've got a lot of urban areas that they say, hey, you know, I know there's been the Thomas fire and there's a lot of other fires in urban communities, but I think possibly there's parts of this western slope in which the urban mentality is, hey, the wildfire is not here. And the other thing that I know it's been difficult to express, but trailer parks are they are very difficult to put out. If they're, once they spread, 15 feet away and you melt at the next aluminum trailer to the next trailer and so on. It's just my opinion that maybe the word, wildfire should be just fire, and that may bring the urban community in a little closer.
That's it. Anything else? I had this discussion yesterday where we were talking about this, and I had it down on the list. But it may be something we need to consider as an overall organization. And one of the horrific ironies of the Tums fire, the Santa Rosa fire in 2017, which I worked for the State Operations Center, was the greatest loss of life was in a senior mobile home park. And the bitter irony is the name of the mobile home park was Journey's End.
Journey's in.
Oh. How's that for bitter irony? But
Yeah.
Places where we have densely populated areas, such as mobile home parks, and some of the more urbanized areas, and now as we have more increasingly subdivisions that are more close together, I think the point is well taken. Is that it may start in the wildland, but it is fire that encroaches on everyone. I don't know what other people's thoughts. Ken?
Well, I think that thought tracks with what we're seeing in terms of who's engaging in the organization. Much of the growth in the fire safety council network has come from the El Dorado Hills communities. And we've all been working through understanding it's different in a lot of ways, including how we're doing homeowner assessments, right? And it's created a lot of those same questions. And so I do think the network that we built over time, we have to more to really respond to this understanding that it may not look like the wildland, but these urban configurations are real and they're tied to wildland fire. But the challenges are to be very different in those. Mm-hmm. So we're already starting to figure out as we bring on board these more urban fire safe councils, they look different, and there's some different issues but that doesn't mean they aren't fire safe councils, they aren't all looking towards the same end. And so I think we have to be flexible as an organization going forward as to how we embrace the differences in what some of their issues may be versus some of the issues in the more rural areas.
Chris?
I just want to tag on Ernie's comment. First of all, you guys know that I talk about county as if it's my own. I'm a geek, I'm a historian, and I understand land use. And I understand Ernie's comment to be important for us to discuss. I would take the other side of it, say, you have your fire protection districts, respectfully, that are in more urbanized areas, and people look to those districts for solutions, for fighting immediate fires to take them out of danger. At the same time, wildfire funding. And the whole network that is still in place from my perspective is important. That we gotta be careful not to go off in a direction which may be. Maybe if we did wanna go in that direction, we could talk to the chiefs, Fire Chiefs Association or to others, the fire marshals. But we certainly should really consider what we have right now. And embellish it as much as we can. Let me tag on to that notion of why are people from the urban areas coming to us is because they don't feel safe, completely safe, with just their fire protection districts. And I'm talking about the El Dorado Hills Community Service District firefighting apparatus. So in that regard, yeah, I think we ought to be here to give them confidence, but also not to be conflicting or saying that there's anything negative with what's already being provided. I don't think that's our place.
Any other thoughts? Greg, you got something?
I don't wanna beat it to death, but all I'm gonna say is that urban and wildland, the word's wildfire. And a wildfire is a fire that's not tamed, and that's really what the issue is. So I don't think you really have I don't know that there's a side on this. I think that it's really what it is.
No, it's.
Interesting, and I'm gonna ask Ruth to mull this over. Because the great thing on this is wildfire, there's wildland fire. Well, fire is untamed as wildfire, so we can parse the language. And so I don't wanna focus too much time on that, because I think it requires some thought and more discussion. So how about this let's leave it for now, and maybe revisit it.
Oh, good. Always informative, yes.
But we have the same, and then we also have the changing of the community itself. I live in Diamond Springs. When I moved there 36 years ago, I would characterize it as exurban. It is now more suburban, and it will continue to be that as time goes on. So we also have to look at that it is changing in place too. But good point. Again, Alice brought it up, Bernie brought it up, and so I think it's something we need to kind of mull over. Is that okay with everyone?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So let's move on to the next recommendation. If there are no other thoughts on this. Next slide, please.
It's not going in.
Just the next slide. If they all heard it, they all heard it. It's connected.
But your fuel bars.
Basically, it was conflict in the seat from PP. And when our discussion last week on this, I said, well, do we just get rid of it? And the group said, well, no, maybe we should build up. Because then please. But what do we want to do? Well, in 2026, maybe what we want to do those planning areas to get together more and to work cooperatively, and have events, to allow some more social cohesion between the different fire state councils within the commonality of their geographic area. And to maybe work with, say, if it turns out that our established planning areas don't jive for any reason, to feed that back to OWOPR in the CWPP. But really, I think it would be great to get those groups together, but also, as much as we'd like, the the chair of the fire safety council to visit all the different associate fire safety council their meetings. We have 33 fire safety councils, and that becomes untenable. If we can bring people together, regionally to get together, the opportunity for the e-board or other folks to come, with, you know, build community and build, those programs. So that was some of the thoughts we had. Ernie?
Maybe I should read this meeting.
Okay, no, that,
Okay, this was brought up when originally Walker was trying to, how to divide up the county.
Mhm.
Of course, north, south, east, west, that made it simple, but I think there was sufficient discussion about elevation. Grizzly Flat, we're at the 4,000 foot elevation or better. We're closer to Kybers and Wright Lake and Holly Volcano, and our geographic conditions versus being put in with the brushland of the southern portion of, or the western portion of the south planning area.
That kind of hurts when you almost push it.
Okay, I'll stop.
No, and you, and I think that was one of the challenges that we looked at, so I think we looked here was to consider geographic community, drainage, circulation, topographic, which is what I think you're talking about here, fire severity and similar factors. The way it was, parsed up, it was, you know, more geographic than, you know, topological. Dorothy?
Well, when we're looking at the CWP is one thing, but we're also using the concept, Ernie, to how do we push out with public outreach? And we needed to put it at the end, just because at least in the area of public outreach, they're not hard boundaries. And Ernie, you're welcome to come join the Camino, our side of the county at any time, because we understand there are certain elevational things that are similar to it, but they're not hard boundaries. But it's a concept of, for us to look, we've got a starting place. And that's at least what we're morphing this into, how we'll be pushing out and are pushing out the public outreach piece.
And I think that we should exploit, those commonalities that, you know, if, you know, areas, you look at, you know, the USDA zones, I'm in zone 9A. But as you move up in elevation, when you have more conifers and evergreens rather than oaks, then the ways in which you tackle vegetation management and the challenges of managing that, I don't think the planning areas preclude working with areas of like topography. So, and I think that is one of the things that there's always a danger of being too ossified in these planning areas, and we should work on exploiting the commonalities where we can. Dorothy, you have something else?
Yeah, I did. The other thing is we want to understand too, Ernie, unfortunately, your whole community up there has experienced something because of the Caldor fire that nobody else has experienced in that sort of magnitude. And so that in itself sets it that you guys are special up there, but we need to keep that in mind when we're thinking of planning areas and what our projects are and or activities going on.
Okay. Tanya, any thoughts from your perspective?
Yeah, we involved Fire Safe Council in the Fire Safe Council was very heavily involved in the choosing of the planning areas. We had come up with, you know, an initial draft of planning areas. We got Fire Safe input probably 3 or 4 times before we came up with what it is now. And like I think Dorothy mentioned, they're not hard lines, so they can be based on what is being worked on or what the situation is. Boundaries has changed. It's just a starting point, like Jordan said. So
Yeah. Chris?
I'm sensitive of this issue because I've been at the Board of Supervisors when actions have been taken on what we're dealing with now in place. And Ernie's point is important. As we see ourselves from where we've been, the Grizzly Flats Fire Safe Council has a long-standing historical record towards accomplishing what they've been allowed to accomplish. And in that regard, that's all positive, and we don't want to lose the sensitivity of the history. And this question about the fire up there kind of told us that it's just not one group. It's a multitude of agencies and responsible parties. So in that regard, as you know, I was at the grant application meeting, and I had to make a strong decision to go with the El Dorado County Fire Safety Council's approach, as was promoted by our grant coordinator, and or say, well, wait a second, no, there's nothing in the rules that I understand that keeps Patterson Ranch Fire Safety Council from putting in a individual fuel reduction, roadside clearance, hazardous tree grant, because there wasn't anything this year. You know, this was a unique, you could, even if you were doing a maintenance related grant. We had a debate, we had a discussion, and as I said, I deferred to us collectively. Now that we're having this discussion, this is pertinent to how effective do we want our individual fire safety councils to be towards their own geographical area. As Ernie has said, 4,000 feet, more like what pines are even higher, Skyburst, okay. And Strawberry.
Like,
What is it, Strawberry 6? Okay, that I'm saying, could it match up better from that topographic perspective? Yes, it could. But, and as you said eloquently, it was kind of looked at from just a spatial perspective and thought to be north, east, south, and west. And, you know, as long as we agree collectively with that, then that's what we do. But Ken, you brought unique qualities to this organization, and you brought that statewide understanding that we kind of needed at the time. But you live in the South County, which is so, I don't even know why you're not living in El Dorado Hills, you know, in the midst of a lot more individuals, but you have your own reasons. And I didn't know that was a movie. No, but your experience is much broader. And then in that
vein.
I think, James,
go ahead.
these are all good thoughts. There's nothing in the CWPP that prohibits or restricts or discourages aligning on grant opportunities and projects in different ways. Because there's lots of ways to approach this. You can do it from elevation and vegetation types. You can do it from geographics with communities. You can do it with access and roads. There's all kinds of ways where and again, as Tanya said, we came here multiple times in one of these active meetings to try to pin down. We've just got to get something in the CWP so we can start organizing. And what we landed on was the more geographic approach, because yes, I live in South County in the Auckland Fairplay area.
The Glinda section.
Yeah. My neighbors are Omo Ranch, Sandridge, Grizzly Flats. We all share, there are a lot of things out there. So when you talk about, well, we all use the Pioneer Park, we all use, Pioneer schools, there's very few geographic things, but those are some things that are all in common to all of us. So we tend to have a lot of the same sort of issues or projects, or right now they're organizing those councils to do a lot of things together, just like we talked about. But that doesn't preclude Grizzly Flats from engaging with Strawberry and Camino Pollock and sitting down with Tamara and the group saying, hey, what about a grant that address these things in this vegetation type, because we have this common piece. That's what the CFP is supposed to be encouraging, is that discussion. So I guess the point is, don't just because in the CWB, we've organized this a certain way, it doesn't preclude us from sitting down and having that discussion. We just needed to start organizing and starting putting a plan together so we can start collaborating in the best way possible.
Just one little tiny thing. I mean, there would need to be a rationale for organizing based on topography, I mean, in terms of elevation for the grant, right? So, I mean, it's, we might think it makes sense, but how do you articulate to the funder that you're applying for money? Why does it make sense for Gridley Flats to align with Strawberry because they're closer in elevation, which they're not, it's like, sounds like it's 2,000 feet difference, rather than aligning with the South County grant because it's geographical proximity, you know what I mean? Like, so they're, I mean, I think they're just, you need to have a rationale for why that makes sense, because I'm not really seeing it. I get it from like a treatment standpoint, but I don't get it from a project planning standpoint, so I think we just have to articulate why that makes sense to the funder, depending on what the funding, and I'm not asking for that rationale right now, I'm just saying that in a grant proposal, you have to say why that makes sense, so, and again, on the criteria of funder.
I wanna move on, I don't wanna get bogged down this, but go ahead.
30 seconds. Just to tie this together. I didn't feel at the time we had the grant discussion that I was gonna be precluded. In fact, as we know, it was a very tight turnaround, what, 30 days or something? It was completely outrageous. But that's what we had to work with. So sometimes you gotta look at your grants and what the conditions are. And you do a great job of doing that. I think you articulated to me at the time, under the circumstances, you recognized what I was saying. You recognized that I had a prior grant out there, $500,000. But I thought you said it in response to me more like, Chris, I'm not saying that you can't do this, but I'm saying it would be more effective from a fire safe council perspective to just forego it and join in with the other projects. Wasn't it something like that you told me you were so articulate?
I don't remember, but you know, even, I don't want to belabor this either, but CAL FIRE already got 17 grant proposals. So if we're, you know, and we put in 5 of them, even as it was when we're trying to consolidate. So if we're putting in 15, I mean, we're just, again, it doesn't make any sense to do that. We do need to collaborate with each other. We do need to be strategic about our projects. If it makes sense to be strategic based on elevation, then let's do that in the conversation. But if it doesn't, then let's not.
Okay.
You know?
And it could be, for example, developing, best vegetation management practices, based on microclimates, something along that line. But I do wanna move on and I just wanna, expound on, what Chris said, that, Jean-Paul Sartre said that hell is other people.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate that.
Next slide, please.
That tells me a lot.
So this, I think there was universal, agreement that this is one aspect that we really need to nurture.
Mhm.
Is that? Okay. And just because, I'm looking at the same faces right here, right? I'm looking at the same faces and those same faces aren't gonna be here in 5 years. Probably not. Right, so,
Except
for
one.
whatever reason, and so we need to work on that recruitment, retention, support, and I think many of us have seen in our own fire safe councils that we're tired of looking at the same faces and going, we're in a community, and we got to get people together. Get more people, not these same folks, right? And because we want to avoid burnout, we want people to, to build that sense of community. In many respects, for us, where more of the suburban and urban areas, they have neighborhood watch or whatever it might be, in many cases, the fire safe councils are the most significant form of community in a lot of these areas. And I think we really need, I think there was a consensus that this is something that we really need to work on. Other thoughts of people that were called Dorothy, Tamara,
Well, no, I would just say, and that's public outreach. as we're looking at every activity we do, we're looking for volunteers, and we need to have the mindset. It's not just to have them join our fireside council and come to meeting, this and that. It may be just to man a booth one time. That takes the burden off. How do we share the love?
Sure.
Yes.
Banning boots anymore.
We are
Staffing.
staffing. Did it again.
And it takes.
Oh, no. Well, when I'm not here next month.
Hasn't even been 24 hours to it. Yeah.
Well, with the company a long time ago, first got into the volunteer. You always got 20, well, 20% of people that work.
Yeah.
It's all county party. This gentleman, who, I had a great deal of admiration for, became a very big higher up in the Kiwanis organization. And he said, rule number one, when you get on a board like this, the first thing you do is start looking for your replacement. And he was, I giggled about it at the time, but he couldn't have been more true. And as time has gone along, I keep running into this. I remember being on the County Fire Safety Council 10 years ago. And in 2016 through 18, Pat Dwyer, myself, Steve, we're looking around and going, we can't keep doing this. And then thank God people like Tamara showed up and said, yeah, let's reorganize this thing. I was like, thank God. Anyway, but here we go again. It's another generation. Yeah, so it needs to be her. Yeah. It's eternal. You know, it's the care and feeding. And exactly. And a lot of it has to do with, you know, we talk about recognition, you know, volunteer of the year, that would be the David Zielinski Award. But you know, ways in which we, again, to recruit, maintain and encourage it, and it goes back to, you know, efficiency and effectiveness. So we're not spending a lot of time dealing with busy shit. Chris.
So we had a little bit of this, this recommendation this morning when we were talking about the process of Firewise and what we had to go through, and we ended up taking much more time than Ken wanted, I believe. Because, I mean, collectively, we did take, but as we know, we finished early today. So no matter what we spent the time on, we got it done. But I think under the sub recommendation would be that you clearly articulate what we said this morning, that we're gonna be having these processes clear, understandable. And if they're not, we would be looking for that recommendation to what we can do to improve. Because I think that's in essence what we're on this particular one about the volunteers. You get a volunteer, then they find out they can't do what they wanted to do, and maybe they drop off in time. But to keep them, do what I just said. Let's have an organization that is effective in how it handles policies and procedures. Procedures key to this one. I would say it took me 17 years as the president of the El Dorado County Historical Society to find a person to take my place. And she's been at it now for almost 6 years. So there is this question of the next person that comes along being, we note them and then we track them and try to get them involved as much as we can. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Just wanted to, well, I mean, I was on this meeting, so I should have brought it up before, but, not to forget the social aspect of it. I just had a newer volunteer on my fire safety council who's totally jumped in and done a bunch of stuff. And she told me that getting involved with the fire safety council has completely transformed her life because she moved to the Divide like a couple of years ago, didn't know anybody, and has totally made all these friends. And now she has like a social life that she didn't have before, which I was like, great. And so she says yes to everything because she is making friends and having fun. And so I think we don't want to forget the fun part
Mhm.
and the social part, because that is why people stick around if they have people they like hanging out with.
And there, I have been asked to work on some social stuff, and I have been remiss in that, so we gotta get our party up, right? But one of the points that, has come up is we have 33 or so associate fire safety councils. And we want to make sure that the organization is driven by those fire safety councils. And it's incumbent on the E-board to take those, those efforts or, desires, and as well as we can, to turn it into reality for the entire group. But this becomes unwieldy, because we have so many fire safety councils. But I think it is felt on the E-board that we don't want to drive the organization top down. We want it to be a bottom up organization. But it's HL. So Bruce, and then we're gonna move on.
Yeah, just very briefly, and this really pertains to what you were just saying, Paul, is that at the local fire safety council level, it's been a constant frustration of attracting talent. And I've always suggested to people, instead of creating job description that you want to attract someone to, if you have someone show up who's willing to volunteer, find out what their skill sets are, and then give them something to do that will use the skill set. And sometimes that flexibility will breed some repetition and people more people.
That's why we got Paul.
That's a big mistake.
I'm sure what that's.
Yeah, I just want to briefly piggyback on what Tamara just said about social.
Mhm.
But that is a key point. And, Ken and I early on, back when we first moved into this facility, we had talked about an annual barbecue here.
Yes.
And I would just like to throw out there for people to start noodling on and thinking about doing that. And not just, originally, we just talked about inviting all the current members of the Fire Safety Council, but I would think maybe we could think a little bit more about that. And let's say Georgetown, Tamara's got a couple people that she would like to introduce to the Fire Safety Council, or maybe Texas Hill. Maybe if Texas Hill, I'd invite them to come to the barbecue, and that way they get to meet everybody, they get to see everybody. And I think that might be a way, I'm just thinking, that may be a way to help build our rosters a little bit. I don't know, but it's something to think. I'm not saying do it. I'm saying something we should think about.
Okay.
And Jessica said she'd help.
I know how to do it.
Those communities. And I knew nothing. I came into these meetings and I thought I landed on a planet because all the I mean, acronyms in this area were.
Oh.
Things like they can't join the club.
Yeah. And I know that you guys do this, and I know that Angel, and for her, Karen wanted to get people together. I would have loved somebody to say, okay, you're from a Greenstone, you're new. Okay, I'm gonna take you and I'm gonna meet with you for 4 hours and I'm gonna tell you exactly what you need to do. I didn't know anything. And I should have reached out a little bit more myself too, but I was kind of, I was so shy then. But
No mas.
I think embracing the newer people a little bit better, because it's what Tamara said. I will say, now that I've been in this for 3.5 years, and I can't believe it's been 3.5 years, I've met incredible people throughout this whole organization. But okay, well, this is it. I thought it was a well-greased machine, and I think.
Fool you.
People are new to this and really sitting them down, and this is, what you need to do. And I mean, I had to go into the Firewise and I had to figure that out myself, and although some people did say you need assistance with it, but it was easier for me just to go in and take a look at that, that part and the piece that they wanted me to do. But, in response to that, there's some people in our community that say, oh, you're gonna get some brownie points for doing this, and most of the people are very appreciative I mean, I've done a bunch of assessments in our area. So I think that has to be played up, that there is a big reward for
Mhm.
doing this. And it's getting engaged and we all know how bad the fire situation is.
Making the world a better place to live.
Yeah.
But I do remember when you first, were kind of thinking about this and you brought us up to the firefighter hall and you had this kind of like look, right? But I think, Angel's done a great job in basically getting, the new fire safe councils more able to get up to speed than had done previously. But yeah, we should probably have a mentor program and things like that, to help people get moving forward. We have, 11, recommendations, so we should probably move on, right? So, Jessica, next slide, please. Well, this kind of, was discussed earlier. This has really been an effort on the part of the E-board to say, let's get the fire safe councils as much flexibility as we can, as much money as we can. That's where the work gets done, right? And so, we provided the Green Way stuff. The treasurer has done an amazing job in providing support to the fire safe councils. As you saw today, we bumped it up to $2,500 and, hopefully the money will stick around so we can keep doing that and to try and minimize the restrictions as much as possible. Any other thoughts on that? Moving right along. So one of the things we want to make sure is, we're dealing with a lot of professional organizations, fire organizations, the county, the feds and things like that, and we're a volunteer organization. Many times I have seen that volunteer organizations occupy a lower tier among the professionals. I believe that the Fire Safe Council in this county has standing. And that we stand, almost as equals among many of those who do this as a professional job. And the fact that we are part of so many things, a part of, the coordination group that, we work with the FPOs and things like that, is basically, the credit goes to the organization, that they do look to us to fulfill the function, that we have. And it's also, the fact that, as I mentioned earlier, when this started off, when Bruce and Steve and Pat Dwyer and folks, the fire safe councils were doing the work that other people should have been doing. You just look at the change in CAL FIRE. They were, say, they've never lost a foundation in their life, but they were focused in on fighting fire, not preventing fire, even though there was a whole section of that. I think, and you would probably agree that the emphasis has changed over the past 10 years within CAL FIRE, where people that wore stars had less standing than people that had bugles. And it changed, and I think that we occupy a very important niche, and we're not occupying the entire niche that we were, for the most part. And I think we just need to do this. One of the things that we talked about in our discussion group last week was possibly within those planning areas, assigning a member of the E-board to be the point person for that planning area. So if the South group wanted to bring something up into the E-board, it would be, they would appoint, say it's me or Dorothy, whoever it might be, so that person, they have an identified conduit in order to argue or to present that. I've always said that whatever you're dealing with, whatever organization you're dealing with, you always need to have someone inside the decision-making body who will advocate for you when you are not there. Okay? And so the idea was possibly identifying within the E-board itself, someone as a point person. And I don't know if that resonates with people or not. Yes, sir.
Did you want to do the lead first or?
Okay. You're just confusing up your allocation for the day.
No, you're not gonna do this. Because was used last month. No, if I think in my head that I'm not saying something that makes sense to some degree, then I don't say it. So in this case, I just remembered what, Tamara had said on an earlier segment. It was the Martinez Creek, project. That's the one that I would take advantage of. So as you identify these areas and have a coordinator, if there is a good common sense reason why an individual fire safe council should pass on a particular grant application, annual grant application, I'll believe you if you could just make a good story. And in this case, it was a really good story because it's gonna happen, I hope, at some point. To this question of organizations, you know, we're all intertied. And when we say a Whopper, we're really saying El Dorado County. They're not a separate agency or a separate entity. They are part of the county. And so the county's budget process shows me this year how money can be cut, just dramatically so, and leave us with less from that the liaison aspect of it. Now, in the case of let's say Whopper, they're bouncing back in other ways because we're gonna help them as much as we can as an organization, and that effectively then supports them, and we know that we need them. But when we go to SOFAR, I understand SOFAR because David had told me that their funding was cut. So as a group, they're not gonna be, unless they go off on their own, not gonna be as financially effective because they don't have the money unless they're donated to or something else. So we gotta be real careful here if these relationships can be here and then gone in a matter of just a annual decision. So I just want to add that aspect of it, and hopefully, did you comment on what I just said about that part of the one day you have it, next day you don't?
Well, I think we're seeing it at every level. You know, how, I think, we can talk about this a little bit more at one of the later recommendations. No, but the point is that you cannot live a long and healthy life on grants alone. Right? And we cannot rely on other people because of the vicissitudes and fluctuations in sources, and sometimes no, I'm not gonna say that. Okay. That these things will change, and we just can't rely on it over the long term. Even things that we thought were in the bag get unbagged. It's just good.
I'm just going to put out a gentle reminder, we're an hour in, and there are additional meetings after this for this hall. So I think we should limit the discussion to maybe 3 to 5 minutes per recommendation.
And I think the later ones, we have one big one, and then the others should go.
We're good here on the calendar. We're always good till at least 3 o'clock.
We're not gonna be here.
No, I don't mean it, but we tell them out of here at 3 o'clock because we have to set this up for their e-board.
We will, we'll move forward, thank you.
And if you'd like me to time it, I can.
You use the caliper?
I will put,
You know what? I'm becoming more attracted to her every day.
some of us have not eaten lunch. Exactly.
Okay, right along. Any other comments of this? I think we just need to maintain that. The fact that, are they, you're involved with the FPOs or someone, right? And we just need to keep doing that, because half the life is just showing.
Actually, you should go
Right?
e-board.
Well, next time, please.
3.
Can I say, well, this has to do with that we are people who are the grassroots organization. And I believe that it has been validated by the MOU and other things like that, that when organizations want to be able to work with the communities when it comes to fire-related activities, they turn to us. And, we just need to, we need to be able to deliver on that. This goes back to all the other things we're talking about. Okay, next item, please, unless there's any other comments. Now, before we jump to this one, because this is a big one, any other folks that have not commented? Ken, do you have anything, any comments, any thoughts?
Not on that necessarily, actually, I have a 115 in Folsom.
Okay, well, before you bolt out here, any comments for the group, observations?
Well, outreach and education, I've always been number one on that. It's the way that we get towards our head. We need to get more blood other than those of us that are a little older.
Right. And have a grass hue to our page.
Yes, that and getting in the younger generations. The schools, the colleges, et cetera. That's kind of one of my thoughts, but not having read the recommendations and a little challenge on bringing points. Unfortunately,
Okay, well, thanks for I think we all agree that as time goes on, this aspect of the Fire Safety Council will take on and should take on more and more importance. Partially because other organizations such as OWAP have taken on many of the other responsibilities that we have been doing. And the division of labor, in my mind, that's a good thing. We just kind of like run down here. We want to have strong support for the newly formed Fire Safety Council. I think Angel has done an amazing job in that, and we could do a better job. And, you know, as Janine had brought up, you know, we want to reduce the struggles to get up and running. And, you know, maybe assigning mentors or, you know, the idiot's guide to forming a Fire Safety Council and things like that. Which I could use. And then, yes, sir.
I reviewed all of these last night and then today I'm getting them again in a different form. But essentially I've gone down all of these and every one of them makes common sense. They're all really, really good. I think it was the earlier ones that maybe only had one sentence or you were trying to figure out where are you going with that we could maybe improve on that. So I would say overall, for all the recommendations, that would be the case. In this particular case, though, when we started, Patterson Ranch Fire Safety Council was number 12. And so I got into it when the founders and the initial people like Bruce and that I had there, who were also Fire Safe Council chairs, or at least part of a Fire Safety Council, like Pat Dwyer, Logtown. They were there as our mentors because we operated much closer to the Fire Safety Council itself. But now would you say 32?
32?
Yeah.
32, okay. That's not 12. So it's got to function different. And but highlighting a mentor, where before we could just grab it because it was available to us, I think that would be a very good recommendation in terms of people that are experienced, maybe have gone through it themselves and they could help. And so I give you kudos for that consideration.
Very good, thank you. And then we have, again, to provide a venue. Chuck, do you have something you want to say?
Yeah. With reference to some of the things said before, and I think in that list, the need to look for volunteers who are younger and so on. Education is not highlighted there. If we were integrated into the schools, high schools, colleges, ages that we had volunteers that were doing assessments and so on, that were not, older ages, and the young people joining. How do we get the next generation, require the educational liaisons in there?
Well, I think that goes to some recommendation 3, but Goodwood to the south.
Yes. I have to agree with him 100%. This is what I've been thinking, because in the schools and the high schools, as a secondary program or after school thing where kids can get involved in this. I mean, I remember when I was in high school, I was all eager for all of this kind of stuff. And fire's not gonna go away.
Yeah.
And so to kind of incorporate kids, maybe from sophomore, juniors and seniors, I think it's a really good idea to get them involved.
Jessica.
I go to church and like 2 weeks ago, they actually had a service that was speaking specifically around defensible space. And they tied it into Christian values, but they have, children programs, high school, junior high. I mean, these are communities that we should be tapping into to connect with and get these communities involved. They do events all the time and they're educated with the ordinance and how important it is for the community, to be more involved, defensible space specifically.
Yeah, I have to agree with that, because I remember, and I'm really dating myself now, I was given literature when I was a little kid on building a bomb shelter.
I'm glad she had shelter up the end of the night.
I went home with that information and it was all over it, the family. Brother and sister that were older, it's like.
When you find yourself digging a hole, yeah, you gotta build a bomb shelter.
Shelter.
Hey, this is Sherry.
Really get involved with that, really get excited about that and getting the parents' attention, because we don't really go away when we're little. We just
So,
look at it.
If I could quote Crosby, Stills and Nash, teach your parents well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And am I hearing someone in the back?
Yeah, Sherry has a hand. Sherry Hawk.
Hi, Sherry.
It's so funny. I was thinking of the same song. Tells you how old I am. So when we had our meeting last year, we had a great discussion. The Sierra Ridge school came. I actually think it was school district admins came to that meeting, and we talked about integrating with the school to get this out and to get volunteers, because a lot of times they have projects that they have to do for the high schoolers that revolve around community service. So it's a great way to get them involved. And we were hoping to be able to get into the schools and have those conversations, like an assembly where they're all in, the auditorium and go over what's going on and get some volunteers. So we have them growing up, knowing what this is, getting them excited about it and passionate about it so they do it when they're adults. So I think it's a really, really great idea. Unfortunately, this last year, I just didn't have time, and I don't have the volunteers that have time, and it's getting really, really frustrating. So it's something I would like to take the time to do up in our area. And I think it's really important to do it that way and through the churches. And our church has a youth group. We can go to the youth group and come up with some, something that's some kind of a flyer or a little booklet that's geared more around kids and how they can understand not just wildfire, but evacuation and all those great things. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. And again, I believe the consensus has been this and the volunteer one need more. We would benefit from more emphasis on this. And you'll notice in some recommendations previously, service organizations, local government, natural resources, faith and community groups and schools and whatever it might be, we need to be able to turn over every rock and be there and be seeing here, look at peer support which kind of goes to the topic that Janine brought up, and the Speakers Bureau and information packets, and working more closely with our, the fire department. And as Dorothy had indicated during the meeting today, on collecting information on our activities and testimonials and best practices, and improving our social media presence, partially because how do different demographic groups, in this case younger folks, how do they get their information, right? They don't get it from Facebook because that's only for us old farts, right? And things like that. And the survey that's being developed, and things like this. This is really where I think we can thrive and really build the organization. Dorothy, you had something?
Oh, well, community service too, especially at high school when they want to apply to colleges and things like that. Also need to, and fire safe councils, it's right up our alley, but it is an area that we really need to focus on. That's all I can say. And we have made some great strides and we have some big holes still in this area.
Ready?
Okay, comment, the Grizzly Flat Fire Safe Council was trying to develop a youth corps to be involved in our Fire Safe Council.
Oh, cool.
We had wrote up a liability sheet, which had to be for medical or whatever else the student was involved in, and having the parents sign it and so on. So it's not as simple as, just grab a kid off the street and say, hey, start shoveling or picking up or whatever else. It's more important for protecting ourselves from the liability of them getting hurt or otherwise going after you. One other thought pattern real quickly was that prior to the Caldor fire, I used to give a Ready Set program to the two-room schoolhouse up at Grizzly Flat. Of course, now it's burned and everything else, but we had kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and we used to hand out the Ready Set. Each year I picked a different one, ready, next year set, and then go was the third year. And so each, not spending a lot of time, maybe 15 minutes. And we had a fire department there to talk to the students, but of course that disappeared, so that's my.
So, I do want to comment about the public outreach committee. So I look at all of these, the 2025, one of your objectives was to be on the working group, which you have been, and it has been going wonderfully. These are also great, these are so many great ideas, but going back to your lack of capacity or your lack of volunteers, it's hard for you to implement all of this stuff that you want to do. We have been, if you came up with some sort of program to run with, to bring to the children in the schools, do you have enough people to do that? Do you have the resources to do that where you are now? Yeah, I'm seeing the head shakes, which is no. And disseminating your assessment findings, that's a report. I think that there may be a struggle with getting somebody to do a report. So there's really, really good necessary things that need to be done for public outreach, and you don't quite have the capacity to do all of that, which is why the public outreach committee is a really good resource for you, because you have the county and you have CAL FIRE and the local fire districts and everybody else who is wanting to push out information for each other. And so when you're having your brown bags about public outreach and education, this is all stuff that should be talked about so that Dorothy or whoever else can bring it back to the group so that we can help you make sure that this information is getting out. Our office particularly works very, very hard to get out Fire Safe Council information, but the public outreach committee really is committed to doing that as a group.
Thank you.
Is education represented in the working group?
Can you say that on the microphone so the people on Zoom can hear you?
So the public outreach working group or the public outreach committee is just wildfire mitigation or groups, anybody who's involved in that. But If we are working on something, a project or a campaign or whatever it is, we will bring in whoever is relevant to that. So if we want to have some discussions about how we get wildfire prevention onto curriculum, then we would bring in somebody from the school. So it's just dependent on what we're talking about.
I don't believe that essentially the policies of the county necessarily drive this discussion today. But that's a good point, what you're saying, because it's really relevant to whatever organization has to have a memorandum of understanding with the county. There are certain guidelines and a certain amount of information that you must provide, or else you won't get your memorandum of understanding. So having that been done, we effectively as an organization are meeting our obligations as long as we have a strategic plan. And in this regard, to get back to what this recommendation is, outreach and education, I think a term that you don't use is intern. When you have a paid or non-paid intern, that's what you give to the kids to be able to then put on their resumes and put on their applications for higher education. That ability to process. The second part is when you talk about kids younger, I automatically think about the merit badge system. Is there a wildfire merit badge currently? If there's not, this organization could communicate with the Sacramento area region of scouting and say, we believe that church under the circumstances, and we think we can prove it, that there should be a wildfire merit badge. But we, in terms of my efforts with other nonprofits, we use the word nonprofits up here, which I don't see. But also in that regard, the scouts in their Eagle Scout program are there to get their Eagle Scout award. And so they put in hundreds of hours in order for us to be successful by utilizing them. So this is really, really, and you've already said it, I'm just repeating yourself. This is a focus that we have to be continuing to hone in on and adjust. Thank you.
Dorothy, and then a couple comments.
Yeah. And I just wanted to say the public outreach that Tanya chairs for us, I'm the representative that sits there. And the agencies that are there, they're really working, they've got a foundation now. And a process to be able to push information out and check down the line. Yes, it would be great when we can get the educational school systems, which is also the community hubs in our areas, to be able to see how we can loop them in with the process. And don't forget, there's always campfire. If you go online too, they have a lot of kids stuff. There's a lot of nice fire stuff that people have already, so instead of us recreating the wheel, there are, and granted they're downloads, but there is information out there and activities and things that can easily be produced and sent out via however we want.
And I think because of the, public outreach work at OWAPR, doesn't mean that we're doing all the work. We
No,
just want to make sure it gets done.
Yeah.
And if we go, work with OWAPR, department, whoever it is,
yes.
as I say in emergency management, cheating counts. Okay, however you should work, right? And opportunity is not necessarily bad. And finally, I was at Crosby, Stills and Nash first public in August of 1969. Next up. In the mud. Okay, next slide, please.
Sorry, folks, I gotta go. I got people showed up my house that I thought were coming later and I've been summoned. So before I go though, the only thing left is just 4 tables here with 12 chairs. I tried to clean as much of that up as I
Thank
could.
you,
That,
Gil.
just grab those petitions. One goes over there, that one just folds up there. Dorothy knows,
Yeah.
just the TVs, take them, cover them, put them away. The only difference now is the camera, and Jessica knows about that. And then the log out and the lock the gate. Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
Bye, you guys.
And, so think, basically, we, if they give you the bully pulpit, take it. And there are some things that, we need to work together. I've been pushing the idea that, in managing the watershed, 10 years ago, the fire committee, the water committee, and the conservancy committee were probably at different ends of the spectrum. And I think these days they're probably a lot closer together. So there's some things where we work with the greater conservancy community, greater water community, greater fire community to get as much done, and we should support those other groups also, when we have like goals that can be accomplished. And again, these days, I don't know what the rules are, but we just need to make sure we don't, jeopardize our nonprofit status. Next slide, please. Okay. Fiscal responsibility and stewardship, the thing that will kill any organization, right? And as much as I love all of you, I don't want to share a jail cell. Well, maybe some. But I think we've done an amazing job considering the complexity. Kudos to Janet and to staff, making sure our fiscal, world is in order. And we've done that. I did one other comment in my discussion with Alice on the previous one is information and education are tied, but they're not always the same thing. So just say handing out information is one thing, education is another, and they can be tied together. But we do both. And the defensive space, the whole hardening, hopefully the upcoming landscaper and contractor training and things like that. All this builds together to build a cohesive whole. And then again, we're looking to streamline and consolidate our practices, which I think we're doing. Create tools for the associate fire state councils and ensure that we have complete transparency. Any other thoughts on that? Again, thank you, Jim. Without your work, we'd be in a world of trouble. Local funding. I think we're all seeing that we cannot rely on grants alone. I want to let you know there are some efforts to provide a stable and long-term funding source, not as much as we'd like. And I would love to be able to talk about it at the November meeting, but we're off by a day, so we'll probably be able to discuss it in our January meeting. And we've got a whole class on money. We'd love to see it. We're just going to keep doing the admirable work that Tamara's been doing and everyone else, trying to bring in the grants, but we need to diversify our funding source. So there we are. Any other questions on that? Again, there's some things going on that we'll be able to elaborate on more in the future. Next slide, please. Whoa. Conduct an annual review of strategic plan and recommendation. That's where we are. So, sure. Have it.
So in order to wrap this up, the way I see it, is that what we've done is an annual review of our strategic plan. And I think the recommendations that you heard that hopefully we got down in notes, that we could say, yes, we agree with the review of those, not that we take one position or another, but that it's reviewed. And then that to the second bullet, at least what I have is revised as appropriate. Certainly that's the reason why you came today, I believe, to lead us in this discussion. And our efforts to this end is going to be the heart of us as a group. Those are my comments.
Any other thoughts? I think, I think the work we did last year holds. And it just needs to become more robust and to accommodate the work we've done the previous year and dealing with those external factors and where we wanna go. I think, the emphasis is, going to be hopefully, is identified as, the volunteer component and the education and training and outreach. So, any other thoughts? Was this a worthwhile discussion?
Yes.
And I think what we'll do is we'll either be on the agenda for November or January to adopt. There's really no rush. We adopted last year in January. So any other final thoughts? Yeah, anyone? Nope. Okay, and if anyone has any thoughts, please forward those to me. And we will talk about this either more in November or January. Thank you all for your time. This is like the unfinished symphony. Everyone's getting out of here.